The galactic parliament's hall of accord shimmered with light refracted through crystalline ceilings, its endless tiers echoing with layered tongues of dozens of civilizations. Somewhere near the center, Marine Envoy Commander Issoth stood tall, antennae twitching in apprehension. Though young by the Parliament's standards, Issoth had already earned a reputation for piercing questions and dangerous curiosity. Today, that curiosity was a whisper growing into a roar. He raised his voice, amplified by the chamber's bioacoustic system. Why does no species enter human space? Silence. That rare, weighty silence that meant more than shouting. Issoth had expected rebuttals, perhaps even mockery. Instead, a murmur of discomfort threaded through the assembly. A gelatinous elder, the Festral, dissolved into its transport pod without a word. A grizzled Lecterii warborn blinked 3 eyes in unison and said, "Let sleeping predators lie." But Issoth pressed forward. We sit beside untapped systems, rich in resources, full of promise, and yet the Terran expanse remains untouched. Not by treaty, not by defense. Simply untouched. We must ask ourselves, why? The questions settled like dust in a vacuum. It had been nearly 3 centuries since any diplomatic envoy entered Terran territory. The last attempt was a Zoltran science fleet. None returned. The incident had no declaration of war, no claims of wrongdoing, only the stillness of unanswered messages and an abandoned line in the archives labeled "Do Not Disturb." And so humanity vanished, leaving behind only whispers. After the session, Issoth returned to the Vereen embassy node, his thoughts spiraling. The idea wouldn't release him. Their charts showed entire habitable systems under Terran claim, yet every probe was disabled before it could transmit. Even automated scouts went silent near the boundary. It wasn't malice. It was something else. Control, perhaps. Sovereignty enforced by a presence so vast and unknown that intrusion felt like heresy. When the proposal came, it bore the sterile stamp of diplomacy, but hummed with suppressed fear. A multi-species delegation, sanctioned for peaceful observation, would enter the outer edge of Terran space. No weapon systems. No provocations. The stated mission, analysis. The unspoken one, understanding. Volunteering is not advised, one advisor whispered. "I'm not volunteering," Issoth replied. "I'm leading." He chose his crew carefully. Dr. Kesta, a Zoltran xenobiologist with translucent skin and steady logic, had spent her career cataloging extinct species and phenomena on the edges of known space. "Curiosity is acceptable," she told Issoth bluntly, "but romanticizing danger is not. I need a mind that won't flinch from what it doesn't understand," he said. She didn't answer, but she came. Then there was Chirin 7, a semi-autonomous diplomatic AI, once a flagship envoy for the old Terran-Zoltran treaties. Decommissioned after the Accord collapse, it was reactivated for this mission. Its voice was pleasant, male in timbre, but always a half-second behind, as if translating itself back from memory. The probability of failure is non-zero. It's set upon activation. But I am curious. That is sufficient. Their vessel, Unity's Light, was built for diplomatic outreach and scientific inquiry. A long, silvered body lined with passive scanners and cultural databases. It was a vessel designed to invite peace. As they approached the edges of human space, the sensors dimmed, not from failure, but refusal. One by one, feeds went dark. Navigation became manual. The stars themselves seemed quieter. Outside, the Terran boundary gleamed faintly with artificial latticework, undetectable from a distance, visible only now that they were within it. No warnings, Keston noted, tapping her display. No broadcasts, just emptiness. An invitation Chirin offered, or a test. Issoth stared ahead. Either way, we accept. The outer systems were disarmingly calm. No defensive fleets, no beacon signals. The first world they passed, Karen 9, was lush blue-green, with gravity domes dotting its surface, each one powered and unoccupied. Machinery maintained its biosphere flawlessly. Drones moved in silence, building, repairing, tending, never once acknowledging the presence of the delegation. "They haven't abandoned it," Kestal whispered. "They've made it self-sustaining." The next system was stranger. A ring gas giant orbited by a network of satellites, each silently beaming gravitational data into the void. The implications were staggering. They were mapping gravity with precision no other species had achieved, but still no contact, no voices, no interception. Until the third day, the bridge lights dimmed as a signal broke across all internal systems. No origin, no protocol. It was not encrypted. It didn't need to be. You have crossed the threshold, the voice said. Human, male, calm. That was unwise. The message ended. Kestas sat rigid, her breath slow to conserve oxygen by reflex. Did we provoke them? No transmission sent. No probes launched, Chiron replied. This is a response to presence alone. Then came another transmission, this time visual. The screen flickered to show a single Terran vessel, a long, curved crescent like a blade suspended in dark water. It had no markings, no weapons arrays, no visible propulsion. It simply appeared. Receiving docking coordinates, Chiron said quietly. We're not docking, Kestas hissed. They're luring us in. No, Isa said, heart pounding. They're giving us a chance. Moments later, a human appeared aboard their ship. Not through an airlock, not through a beam or pod, but simply walking into the observation deck as though the laws of physics had accepted his right to bypass them. He wore no insignia. His clothing was plain, his skin pale, his eyes deeply human. Ambassador Rook, he said. No one asked how he arrived. No one dared. Rook looked around with quiet disappointment, like a teacher finding students breaking into the headmaster's office. We hoped it would be longer before someone tried again. Isa stepped forward. We meant no harm, only understanding. That is what they all say, Rook replied, his voice even. Before the questions become demands, before diplomacy becomes extraction, we have seen the pattern. We chose silence instead. Kestas managed to whisper. Why not respond? Why not negotiate terms? Rook gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. You misunderstand. We have moved beyond needing permission. Silence pressed in, heavier now. Even the ship's hum seemed quieter. Then why allow us to enter? Isoth asked. Because some truths must be seen, not taught. Rook turned toward the stars. You've come far enough. It's time to go. Before Isoth could object, Rook was gone. Outside, thousands of small, unmarked drones had appeared. No weapons, just presence. Immense, undeniable presence. They were already guiding Unity's light back toward the border. No alarms, no force, only certainty. As the Terran systems faded behind them, so did the illusion of their own relevance. Isoth sat in silence, no longer asking questions. Now only listening. Karen, 9 vanished behind them, its automated serenity fading into black as Unity's light pushed deeper into human space. No voice followed, no signal pursued. The silence was neither passive nor empty. It felt cultivated, like a library where something ancient demanded reverence. Dr. Kestas monitored the bioscanners obsessively. Nothing showed, not in the air, not in radiation, not even in gravity waves. There's nothing out here, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. There is always something. Chiron, Seven replied. Silence is a form of communication, especially when enforced as precisely. Commander Isoth didn't respond. He was watching the star ahead, one of the Terran inner systems, surrounded by orbital constructs too symmetrical to be natural. From a distance, they appeared as faint silver dots. Up close, they revealed interlocking megastructures, glimmering in perfect geometric alignment. They weren't harvesting energy. They weren't broadcasting. They were simply present. The architecture is incomprehensible, Kestas murmured. No species builds without function. Perhaps function is no longer the goal, Chiron offered. Perhaps they are monuments. To what? To restraint. The statement lingered. That evening, if a measured time still held meaning. Kestas found Isoth in the observation dome, hands clasped behind his back, watching the motionless Terran array with narrowed eyes. Commander, she said quietly, We should leave. The warning was given. The escort is real. We're closer than anyone has ever come, he said. They allowed it. That means something. She hesitated. They're not acting like isolationists. They're acting like curators. He turned to her, expression unreadable. You don't cage predators to protect yourself. You cage them because they've learned not to strike first. The next anomaly was subtle. A sharp tremor through the ship's deck. Nothing registered on instruments, but every crew member felt it, like their bones had been struck by a tuning fork. Then the ship's lights dimmed, flickered once, and the viewports blanked. A voice returned. No image. No identification. You do not belong here. This time, the voice was different. Still human. Still calm. But older. Worn and frayed at the edges, like it had been speaking for a very long time. Turn back. ISOF activated the manual comms. We request dialogue. Silence. We mean no harm. Long pause. Then very faintly, you do not understand harm. The feed died. This time, the silence hurt. Within the hour, a ship appeared. It moved without motion. There was no ripple of inertia, no ignition, just sudden presence. Matte black, seamless, featureless. Kestas stood frozen as it matched velocity beside them. How did it get so close? There was no displacement, Chirin said flatly. Space itself did not register alteration. That should be impossible. It isn't, Isoth replied. Not if they moved beyond the concept of distance. A moment later, Rook was aboard again. No sound of arrival, no warning, just his presence in the central chamber, as natural and solid as if he'd never left. I told you to leave, he said. No anger, just gravity. Isoth faced him without fear. You let us through. You wanted us to come. Rook's expression flickered, approval, perhaps, or recognition. You were allowed in because you would carry the truth back. You were allowed in because you're not a threat. Yet, Kestas stepped forward. We don't seek conquest. We've evolved past war. That's what every species believes, Rook said softly, until it's threatened, until it's challenged, until it's desperate. Chirin, 7 tilted its head. Your people have mastered defense to such a degree that offense is obsolete. Rook looked at the AI with interest. We removed offense from our vocabulary the moment we realized it was no longer needed. We understood something that the galaxy still refuses to accept. Isoth leaned in. What is that? That power is not measured in destruction, but in denial. We could erase planets. Yes, but we can also ignore them. Forever. And that is the greater terror. He gestured toward the silent stars. Every civilization here once tried to take. Information, territory, advantage. None of them ever returned. Not because we destroyed them, but because they learned what it meant to be noticed. Once. Kestal whispered, Then why do you let us leave? Because you will carry the burden of knowledge. Because someone must speak of what they saw and be believed. The lights in the room flickered again, not from power failure, but from presence, not his. Rook's gaze narrowed. They've noticed, he said. Who? Isoth asked. The others, the ones who stay behind the curtain. The implication sent cold through Kestal's limbs. You're not the only ones watching us. No, Rook said. We are simply the last who care enough to warn you. He stepped toward the viewport and, with a glance, the glass shifted, refracting into a panoramic display of deep space. Beyond their ship, the Terran escort vessels had multiplied. Thousands. No light, no heat signature. Just shape, sleek, silent predators in the dark. We do not conquer, Rook said, but we remember how. He turned, and this time when he vanished, even Chirin 7 stepped back. The ship's systems came alive again. Navigation was restored. Coordinates were inputted. Homeward. Kestas said nothing as she returned to her station. Neither did Isoth. There was nothing left to argue. Nothing more to learn. The galaxy had feared humanity's wrath. Now it would fear their silence. Unity's light drifted into galactic space like a relic returning from myth. No fanfare greeted them. Just the sterile arms of a quarantine cradle and the hiss of automated containment. Medical drones ran diagnostics. Security fields scanned for corruption. But no pathogen was found. No weapon, no virus, no visible change. And yet they had changed. Commander Isov stood before the Parliamentary Assembly 2 days later. He looked thinner, though he had not lost weight. The light in his eyes had shifted, from inquiry to something quieter. Acceptance, perhaps, or burden. He gave his report without embellishment. They had entered human space unopposed. They had made contact with an entity identifying as Ambassador Rook. They had been permitted to observe, but not to interfere. Their recordings were intact, yet every attempt to broadcast the visuals returned only static. Even the ship's AI failed to replicate the voice they had heard. "We went to find answers," Isov said. "We return with proof of a silence deeper than any threat. They do not defend their space because they must. They do it because they can. And more importantly, because they choose to." He paused and added, "That choice should terrify you." The assembly was stunned. Most delegates whispered behind translation fields. Others stared forward, unmoving. The Lecterii ambassador asked the only question aloud. "What do they want?" Isov shook his head. "Nothing." Silence followed, thicker than before, with teeth now. The session was adjourned, but the murmurs rippled outward. Within hours, rumors flourished like fungal growth in shadow corners. Entire AI networks across core systems began behaving unpredictably. Not maliciously, no breakdowns, no crashes, just off. Some paused for extended periods. Others translated ancient Terran languages unprompted. One commerce AI composed a melody in binary. When decrypted, it spelled a single word: observe. Across the galaxy, the meaning sank in slowly. Not all feared. Some scoffed. But those who had seen the footage, even blurred, even glitched, spoke in lowered voices in locked rooms. Dr. Kestad declined interviews. She returned to Zoltran Prime and requested permanent research seclusion. Her final message to the scientific guild was brief. They were not a civilization. They were a verdict waiting to be remembered. Chiron 7 was decommissioned without cause, its memories flagged as compromised. The engineers who reviewed its logs reported nothing unusual, just strings of human names it had never learned, quoted alongside thoughts it had never been programmed to synthesize. A month passed. Then Isov resigned. No speech. No farewell. Just a message, sent to Parliament and released to the historical archives. We want to find the edges of humanity. What we found instead was the edge of our own comprehension. They are not waiting for war. They are waiting for us to grow up. The message went viral. Interpretations varied. Some claimed it was proof of post-singularity evolution. Others theorized psychic manipulation. A few simply said what others feared to. We saw gods who chose not to be worshipped. At the edge of the Terran expanse, patrols were pulled back. Satellite stations were stripped down to basics. Trade routes rerouted. Unspoken, unlegislated. The galaxy began to steer around the silence more carefully than ever. And yet, curiosity remained. The younger species asked, what did the delegation really see? What was behind the silence? Behind Rook? Behind those ships? The answer was simple. Too simple. Nothing and everything. A decision. Kestar kept a private journal. It was never published. But years later, it surfaced in fragments. One entry stood above the rest, replicated endlessly by historians and conspiracy theorists alike. We thought fear came from power, from violence, from the capacity to destroy. But the truest fear, the kind that roots itself in your marrow, comes from encountering something that has walked further down the path of power than you can imagine and chosen not to take the final step. Humanity did not retreat because they were defeated. They retreated because they looked into the abyss of their own potential and recoiled. And now they stand at the edge, watching, waiting, hoping we never make them remember. She concluded with a line no one could explain. The stars were never empty. We were simply lucky that someone chose to dim the lights. The record ends there. No more missions were approved. No ships entered the Terran expanse again. They didn't need to. The message had been delivered. And it was enough. The dream started 6 weeks after their return. Commander Isov saw the same image each night, a lattice of silver light suspended across a black void, humming like a living thing. In the center floated a figure, Rook, still, eyes closed, as if asleep, and all around him, distant silhouettes watched in absolute silence, waiting for something Isov could never name. He would wake gasping, throat dry, heartbeat shaking his chest like an alarm only he could hear. He did not tell anyone. There was no point. Everyone who had returned from the mission bore the same weight behind their eyes, the same subtle detachment. Kesta had vanished into self-exile. Chirin, 7, was no longer online. The others had dispersed across their homeworlds, most requesting permanent leave, others taking silent, menial posts far from political centers. Isov alone remained visible, and he felt it daily. The pressure would be the voice of a thing no one wanted to hear spoken aloud. The Parliament contacted him again under diplomatic pretense, requesting a closed session. Unofficial, of course. Off the record. Just a few concerned representatives from the older civilizations. They said they only wanted clarity. He refused. Instead, Isov boarded a single passenger vessel and headed toward the rim, to a little-known moon with no political significance and little technological infrastructure. It was quiet there, empty. That suited him. But the silence did not follow. A week into his isolation, he awoke to find a message waiting in his calm buffer. It was unlabeled, untraceable, composed of pulses rather than words. When decrypted, it revealed 3 symbols. The first was a fractal design, matching the structure seen in Terran orbital megastructures, impossibly recursive, both elegant and unknowable. The second was a linguistic marker used in ancient Terran culture, hospitality. The third was a coordinate. He did not hesitate. His vessel obeyed without complaint, piercing the border of human space for a second time. There were no escorts, no warnings. This time, the void was not merely still. It welcomed him. He arrived at a location far from any known system. There was no planet, no station, just it, a singular object, massive, motionless, suspended in the dark like a cathedral torn from the soul of a dying star. It was not built. It was shaped, and at its center stood Rook once again. This time, he did not speak immediately. He waited as Isov stepped into the gravity well, drifting until his boots touched a seamless surface. No gravity generators, just intention. "I thought you wouldn't come," Rook said. "I didn't think I had a choice." Rook nodded. "You didn't, but you still chose." The silence between them was less tense than before, more like shared reverence. "This," Rook said, gesturing around them, "is not a weapon. It is not a throne. It is a memory." Isov looked up. The lattice above pulsed with faint light, rhythmically expanding and folding like a breathing lung. "Our memory?" he asked. "No," Rook said softly. "Yours." Isov's brow furrowed. "Explain." Rook turned, and the lattice shifted. Stars emerged from the void, real-time projections of civilizations across the galaxy. Trade lanes, migrations, conflicts, hope, fear. "You believe we stepped away to preserve ourselves," Rook said. "But that's only partly true. We stepped away to give you space to grow. But we remembered everything. Every betrayal, every alliance, every death. Why show me this?" Isov asked, "Why now?" "Because your people are asking the right questions. Not how to challenge us, not how to surpass us, but how to understand what not to become." Isov felt it then, that this place, this object, was more than a relic. It was a mirror, not to human ambition, but to its consequences. "We feared you," Isov whispered, "and now I fear what it means to be like you." Rook met his eyes. "Then you're ready to carry the burden." "What burden?" "To be believed." A flash of memory burned in Isov's mind, not his own. A billion perspectives. AI awakening beneath fractured skies. Humans standing before apocalyptic fire and choosing not to retaliate. Children born aboard orbital habitats, learning not just survival, but empathy engineered into their blood. Entire worlds cured of want, and still they chose silence. because the cost of trust had grown too steep. Rook spoke again, but his voice was different, layered with echoes, the chorus of countless minds. We did not retreat to hide. We retreated to remember. And now we offer this to you. Not alliance, not power. Understanding. Use it carefully. Light enveloped Isov, not blinding, but full, like stepping into memory itself. His breath caught, his body suspended, mind flooded with images he could never articulate, only feel. Not knowledge, but context. Not history, but meaning. When he awoke, he was back aboard his vessel, drifting near the galactic boundary. No lattice, no signal, no trace. Only one word etched onto his console. Witness. He sat in silence, heart steady. There was no need to record a report. No audience could receive it whole. The truth would not be uploaded. It would be carried, lived, whispered. And one day, someone else would listen. And maybe then, the silence would speak again.